All right, episode one. Welcome everyone to episode one of Tzu Motives. And then today we're going to be talking about how Asian Americans shifted right in this past election and the whole H1B Visa MAGA Civil War. So, joining with me is my co-host Matt, and I'm Eann, and both of us are Asian Americans apparently. And the first topic we will be discussing about is how Asian Americans have shifted right in the whole MAGA, in the whole past election. So basically Trump won in a landslide and almost every demographic shifted right in the past election, including Asian Americans. And for example, Asian Americans were 35% of them voted for Trump in this election. Only less than 20% of them voted for Trump in the past election. So Matt, what's your take on the whole shift of Asian Americans becoming more right wing and embracing MAGA now?
Well, I think that Asians have always had conservative values stemming from their families, their upbringings, etc. But I think in this election, what particularly struck people was the emphasis of the Democrats and just liberals overall, and just DEI initiatives, right? You know, everybody knows about like the the lawsuits that many Asians have placed on Harvard, on other educational institutions. They feel like, affirmative action programs, DEI programs, they don't give us a fair shot because it's not really a meritocracy if you're lowering the standards for people based on color of their skin or what religion they are or their gender, right? So I think a lot of Asian Americans who, came up from the bottom, literally crawled their way to the top, worked their ass off. We're like, nah, man, we don't fuck with this. So that's why I think a large majority of them shifted right. But also stemming from, the Stop Asian Hate movement, a lot of them thought that they weren't being protected by liberals, by the left. A lot of them thought like these policies are allowing these criminals, these repeat offenders to keep coming out and just keep committing crimes. It's not really keeping the neighborhood safe, If one guy is like pushing people down the subway tracks, which happened just yesterday here in New York, if that keeps persisting under democratic rule, then people are going to seek change. And I think that's one of the largest reasons why you saw that big shift, not just from Asians, but from everybody.
Yeah, let me just pull up this tweet real quick by the one and only Kangman Lee. Friendly reminder that Stop Asian Hate died overnight because people started asking, wait, who's attacking Asians? And they didn't like having to answer that.
Yeah.
So yeah, you brought up such a good point about how Asian Americans, we were supposedly the minorities that the Democrats should be protecting. But then overall what we're seeing is actually a what's the term for it? Basically miss racial profiling us. Like in Washington, D.C., Asian Americans are categorized as white because of socioeconomic status.
I think that's Washington State, actually. Yeah, I remember.
Washington State.
That was quite some years ago when that came out. And then there's like a video. I don't know if you could find it, but or maybe we can find it later. There was a video of some like guy on TikTok. He like pulled up the article and then he like essentially like cosplayed as a white guy, and then as like an Asian guy who tried to be accepted by the white people at the lunch table in high school, right? And he's like, guys, can I sit with you? I'm just like you. And like, get away from us, chink. It's like we're clearly not fucking white, bro. But that just goes to show, and that goes to show like how these issues, they're not even a race thing, right? You want to talk about like, socioeconomics, like that's a real conversation. But to say now in this modern day era of like hypersensitivity and this emphasis on like equity and equality, to say that some race has a disadvantage is completely unprecedented, and it's totally false. Like everybody's drawing a deck of cards, in their life, right? In the beginning of their life, right? It's about how you play those cards. You know, there's Asians too, Asians, whites, Hispanics. Some of them are born into fortunate lives. Some of them aren't, right? But it doesn't fucking mean you like crawl into a ball and say, "Oh, I need welfare, I need government assistance," right? That's not the way to go for life, to go through life. And that's all that, yeah, people, they're sick of that mentality. They're sick of this victim mentality. Not just Asians, but Hispanics, especially Latinos, and then Black people too. Although their margin of shifting to the right was much smaller, you did see that.
Yeah. Like previously, you brought up how Asian Americans have historically been always conservative. Well, that's actually also true for Black Americans, for Latino Americans. And so let's try to categorize the few reasons why Asian Americans significantly shifted to the right in this past election. So the first one you brought up, Asian Americans, our values have always been conservative. The second thing is that we have been disillusioned by the whole idea that the Democratic Party is for minorities, that we have been disillusioned by all the DI policies because it's actually going against Asian Americans. And the third point I want to bring up is mass illegal immigration. So most Asian Americans like us, our parents came into this country like not as wealthy people at all, not as like what those white liberals were claiming. We like my mom came to America to escape communism in Hong Kong. And then we have to work our ass off to get a work permit and then to get a green card and eventually to get citizenship. And then the whole process in general takes over 10 years. But then what we are seeing right now is like complete total open borders for the last 4 years. We got 20 something illegal immigrants pouring in. We don't even know where they come from. A lot of them are dangerous criminals and terrorists. And then we thought supposedly Americans now, especially legal immigrants like Asian Americans, are supposed to be protected by the government. But what we are seeing under the Biden regime is that they are doing the opposite. They are protecting these illegal immigrants. They are giving them housing. They are giving them everything they need. While Asian Americans, we struggle under high inflation, basically rampant crime rate, and we are just struggling to make ends meet. Businesses are not doing well. We got looting, we got shoplifting being legalized in California actually, and then it's just pretty it's just pretty disgusting how the government has been treating Asian Americans. And then I think we can tie it back to the whole how the whole Stop Asian Hate movement died out. Because if anyone knows, one of the biggest community that were really damaged during the George Floyd riot back in 2020 was the Asian Americans who don't have money for insurance of their businesses, who are just really getting screwed over by everyone else. And Matt, so how about you talk a little about like your family background and then how the whole not just the BLM movement, but basically how like the whole illegal immigration situation is affecting you as an Asian American in New York.
Oh yeah, man. It's affecting a lot of people. I remember when the first waves of them were starting to come in, right? Everybody was quite welcoming. You saw even Mayor Adams. He wanted New York to be a sanctuary city. Obviously now he's like pulling back on that stuff because they have him under investigation for corruption with those Turkish airline seats. But yeah, so what a lot of people don't know, and they can look this up too if they don't believe me, is that they're forcing people out of schools. They're forcing people out of these shelters, and they're reopening these foreclosed hotels just to house migrants. And in those hotels, in those shelters, you have gangs uh, who are harassing and even like uh, committing violence against some of the more elderly, more vulnerable people. And it's just a terrible situation, man. Like you have these gangs, Tren de Aragua, especially. I believe they're a Venezuelan gang. Yeah, they're here in America now. They're here in New York because of these open border policies. it's not just affecting Asians, it's affecting the whole city. Like you'll see, like New York before the pandemic, it was fun. It was the safest it's ever been. It was relatively clean. Now they need to put like armed security, National Guard in the subway station, and even then, you still got motherfuckers getting pushed onto the train tracks. Like yesterday, some guy got pushed on a train track. Luckily, he survived. That happened like right near my house too. Luckily, he survived, but it just goes to show how crazy things have gotten. And I'm not going to attribute that just to migrants. It's a whole other issue, like what I was talking about before, the repeat offenders getting multiple chances. Uh,
Like the guy who
and
set the woman on
yeah,
fire
like
on New York
the guy
subway.
who set the woman on fire, he already got deported, and then he illegally entered the country. Like what is that? You know? Yeah, I believe he was from Nicaragua or Guatemala. I forget, but yeah, if we actually had strict borders and we actually uh, had security down there, that wouldn't have happened, and it shouldn't have happened. And whoever was responsible for that should be ashamed of themselves. And I hope that they have their day of reckoning, because that was a disgrace. And then you saw the cop too in that video. That guy just ran past it, just walked past the girl on fire. I mean, by then she's probably already dead. But like, Jesus Christ, man! Like, have some have some pride. Like, do something. Like, this shouldn't be happening. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, out of all the outrage we talk about, out of all the reasons we talk about how Asian Americans have shifted right in this past election, why do I kind of feel like there's still a lack of momentum? There's still like a lack of outrage against the Democrat establishment that has been ruining basically American communities. Why do I still I'm probably not the first one that's feeling like this, right? Because only 35% of Asian Americans voted for Trump in this past election. I feel like there at least should be way more than 35%. We should be at like 45. That's what I feel like. And then also, why do I feel like there isn't as many Asian American voices against these like huge fiasco of the whole administration? So Matt, what do you think is the problem with the Asian American community? How come we're so silent on issues like this? Because we're seeing Latinos for Trump, we're seeing blacks for Trump, but Asian Americans, there just seem to be like a lack of energy when it comes to politics.
You can see like the way that they were taught as growing up. It's not a person. We're not taught to have the personality traits to like be engaged in politics, and that's also why Harvard and these schools discriminate against Asians, talking about they lack personality traits, right? This is essentially what uh, the two of us are trying to fix, right? You gotta break the stereotype of just not speaking up, not being for the guys, not being a man and sticking to your beliefs, and living by your beliefs too. Because if you're so worried about like, oh, my corporation, the HR is going to strike me, or oh, they're going to find my social media, and then then you know are you what do you stand for? You get what I mean? Like, it's so it's difficult. I know a lot of people are scared to share their beliefs, and a lot of people are sort of cuckolded by their job or maybe even their wife. Whole other issue. But I guess they're comfortable with the lives they had. A lot of them were, you know, have bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, uh, received a liberal education, and just not as interested in politics, feel like they don't have a say. So they decide not to engage. But in reality, you know, as being the highest earners in this country, you do have a lot of say, and the voice does matter. If a bunch of small people, or a bunch of people that have no say, decide to elect some strong people who will represent them, then they can actually get some shit done. But I guess Asians don't feel like that, and we're not taught, right? From a young age. We're not encouraged to be involved in politics, whereas maybe other minority groups are. And you can see that other minority groups are more overrepresented in government here than Asians or some other groups as well. Like, you know,
Yeah,
so
Asian
it's a
Americans.
deep issue.
Yeah, in my opinion, it's like our culture is definitely why we are the highest, like the highest income earning group in America. But at the same time, I feel like our culture is also the reason why we're always kowtowing to people in America, always bowing our heads. Especially, I think we have this mindset as Asian Americans that we know we're the minority, and we know that things might not always go as we wish. So we will just bow our heads thinking that, all right, as long as we do what we need to do, as long as we work hard, as long as we do what the boss said, we'll get paid. And then, well, it turns out it actually works out for us. But the issue is that it encourages conformity.
Mm-hmm.
It disincentivizes people from speaking out. It disincentivizes people from creativity. It's basically saying, well, follow XYZ in your life, and that's all you need to do. You don't need to care about anything else. Other people will take care of it. And I think that's the biggest issue in Asian American society. And then one more thing I want to bring up, and I'm sure you're pretty much us two are on the same page with it, is the issue of Asian American man. Like you see in movies, Asian American men are usually this skinny, weak individual who's lacking masculinity, who's usually getting dominated by everyone else around him, who's usually just listening to whatever his wife says. And then I think that's one of the biggest issue we're seeing, not just in Asian American communities, but I feel like the issue with the whole world today is the lack of masculine man doing what is right, the lack of male leadership. This is definitely a controversial take, but especially in the Asian American household. Matt, why don't you talk to us a little about how Asian American men have been emasculated in the American culture?
Well, it all stems from the reasons are a bit historical, right? And I guess there's nothing going through the history, sort of, you know, it doesn't really help because that's the same reason why you see you know blacks or other minority groups. They were like, oh, look at the history, look at how badly we were mistreated back then. Look at all the stuff they put us now. Like, no, forget all that, man. Like, worry about what's going on now. What can you do to change yourself now, right? And you see on social media everybody complaining about Oxford studies, like, oh, I'm losing all the Asian girls. They prefer the white man, right? They prefer mid white over us. I'm like, bro, of course they're gonna prefer mid white over you, bro. Those guys probably have the masculine traits that you do not have, right? You can't expect to attract women. You can't expect to uh, women see you as the provider and the protector if you're a soy boy, right? These white guys, the ones that they're picking, even though in the face they look mid, like, I know a lot of white guys in my family themselves. They have the masculine traits. They're protectors. They're providers, right? Not only do they have like the high paying jobs, which Asians do have, right? They have family values, right? That's something that Asian Americans, they lack. So all I'm saying is, don't forget about like the history, forget about what happened back then, bro. Forget about the reasons why Asian Americans are portrayed like that. Change that. Change the stereotype. You know, don't be the weak Asian anymore. You work out, play sports, become athletic, study too. That's very important, right? Excel academically, get high paying jobs, but don't be a fucking bitch. Don't be a bitch.
Yeah, it's funny how he brought up the term soy boy because soy is literally in our culture. Like we drink soy milk. Well,
Drink soy
we eat
milk, yeah,
tofu. Well,
tofu.
white guys are eating steak. We're lacking all that red meat and well, as a joke, but the issue, yeah, you brought up such a great point. It's like we we've only done one thing out of all the other things you described. We've only excel academically and yeah, getting high paying jobs, but working out is not really big in our culture. Um, Having high confidence is not really like an Asian American trait as well. And then, so that's why in Hollywood, you don't see like G.I. Joe being played by an Asian. Like the only superhero we got is Shang-Chi or something.
And then you
And
got Snake Eyes, who doesn't even talk. Snake
exactly,
Eyes
bro.
from GI, he doesn't even talk.
Yeah, so we Asian Americans, especially Asian American men, we need to the issue with the past election is not really just politics in general. It's the whole culture. It's us needing to stand up for ourselves. It's the Asian American man. We need to start retaking our masculine role so that we're not losing our ladies to the white guys or the Latino guys or the black guys. And to the next issue I want to bring up about is the whole MAGA Civil War we're having between the tech bros and then the America First people. So on the whole H1B visa issue. So let me play this clip of Donald Trump on his take of H1B visa in the past and when he first ran in 2016.
Oh, I don't think the audio's playing.
Oh, can't hear anything?
No, the audio's. I think it's muted, bro.
Let me yeah.
You have to go. No. You see the volume
No,
button and
it was playing. It was playing. Let me switch it
it
up.
was. Oh shit.
Okay. Can you hear it now?
No.
Damn. All right, basically, I'll summarize it up. Trump was saying Trump was saying that the H1B visa, he also uses as well as a businessman, but the whole H1B visa, it's unfair to American workers. And then, so that's what under his administration, he actually did a major change to how H1B visa applicants are selected. So in the past, there is this lottery system that that whoever applies, it's by lottery, it's by chance that you will get your visa approved. But under Trump, he changed it to a wage-based system, which disincentivizes companies from hiring low-wage workers via the H-1B visa, and
Mm-hmm.
instead they will be putting more money to hire high-talent individuals from overseas. And Matt, so what's like your take on the H-1B visa in general?
Well, I don't see really the point of it when you already have the O1 visa, which essentially has the same guidelines for acceptance. The H1B program just seems like a program for these companies to just get cheap labor. And there's even a database online. I'm pretty sure you've seen on X, in which you have like people on the H1B visa working as janitors. Like that's not really high talent, is it? Right? The H1B visa, the guidelines state that you're supposed to have some high 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 level skills, and you're supposed to have education that backs those skills. So why are people being fucking janitors, bro? Why am I seeing people janitors working at 7-Eleven that hold these visas, right? But you have another program, the O1 visa, which people like Jordan Peterson are on, that essentially have the same guidelines, but it's actually hard to get. It's not lottery based; it's merit based. So yeah, the H1B visa just a quick way for people to get into this country, work 80 hours a week. Their employer will exploit them to work long hours because they have no choice. They get fired, then there goes their place in this country. I can see why people are so upset at Elon Musk, Trump, and Vivek for purporting this, and they sort of denigrated American culture by saying like, "Oh, America, we need these people in order to compete with China." Is China taking in these people? Like the whole reason why we take this immigrant labor is because back after World War II, we had the space program. We were trying to get to space first. We were trying to get satellites up there, trying to reach the moon. So we had to get some of these German scientists, even though they were Nazis, into NASA working for us, or else the Soviets were going to take them. Right? China's not doing that. China is the one that they want to beat. That we want to dominate, and then they're not taking immigrant labor. They've shot their economy has grown exponentially over the last 20, 30 years. They're not, they don't need immigrants, right? So what is it like? You're gonna take Indians and Chinese to make America great? No, you should prioritize Americans. Americans here have the skills. They can't even find jobs. These people in tech, they're having such an issue finding jobs. There's massive tech layoffs, and now they just want. It seems like they just want cheap labor. So I understand why people are upset, even though that my parents are immigrants. My like a lot of family are immigrants. I'm not an immigrant myself, but and I sympathize with these people. But it's not. That's not. People aren't uh, taking in H1B workers because they think they'll make America great. They're taking them in because they can exploit them, and that's why people are upset.
Yeah, you brought up about the O1 visa, but before I get into it, I want to talk about how. So you were talking about how after World War II, we need all this talent because we're in a cold war with the Soviets. But then it kind of seems like there's this notion that, well, American workers, we're just not better enough. That's why we need to import foreign talents. There's just this idea that American workers cannot compete. Like our kids are not smart enough, our kids can't recite like to the thousands, um, like like decimal of pi or whatever. But let me pull up something in regards to American college students. So here, data shows U.S. college seniors studying computer science outperform their foreign counterparts by almost a standard deviation. So if you see the graph here, USA at plus
Mm.
0.157, Russia at negative 616 points, negative 616. China China's the best one compared to India and Russia, and India happened to be the worst. And if we look at who's the majority of the people applying for the H1B visa, like it's Indian and Chinese. So why are we importing so many people that's coming in, but they might not necessarily be better than American workers, than American talents? And I'm not discrediting the whole race in general, the whole country in general, just based off the stats here. But what I am saying is that the whole H1B visa issue seems more of like a wage issue other than a talent issue. Like we want cheaper labor into our countries. We want companies to hire cheaper labor. It's like the whole issue of tariffs. Like we want cheaper products, so that's what we're importing. Or like, and then it's the same thing. We want cheaper labor. We don't want to hire American workers, so that's why we are getting Indian and Chinese workers overwhelmingly coming here, especially for Indian workers. Let's look at number 3, Canada. It's at 0.9%. South Korea 0.9%. Philippines, Taiwan, Mexico, Brazil. So the H1B visa is overwhelmingly being taken over by Indians, and then by Chinese at 12% only. And you brought up about how these H1B applicants, a lot of them are not the talents we talked about. A lot of them are coming into this country as working as janitor or as 7-Eleven cashiers, and people can look it up. It's actually, you qualify for an H1B visa as long as you have a bachelor degree. It's not really what job you do actually. And Matt, do you know what's the acceptance rate of people who apply for the H1B visa? Do you have an
I
idea of
don't
it?
know. I
It's
would
yeah. Yeah, give a
I would
guess.
say that I don't know, like 40%.
40%? So double that and then add 15%. It's at,
Jesus Christ,
in general, it's at 97%. If you talk about
97%.
how high Yeah, and then the H1B visa. A lot of people talk about, oh, we want legal immigration, legal immigration. The H1B visa is a non-immigrant visa. It's a
Yeah.
temporary worker visa.
Mm.
It's not even in a visa for immigration. And we have a 97% rate of accepting it. While other immigrant visa is the acceptance rate is astronomically lower than that. And so this really reflects it's not about legal immigration at all. It's really about displacing American workers in the first place so that companies can hire cheaper and then they can discredit American talents. And this also ties back to the whole DEI conversation we had previously. But before I get into that, let me show this. So here's report from Fortune. Apple pays 25 million to settle suit over favoring foreign hires and making it so hard for US workers to apply that few or none did for certain jobs. Facebook also had the same issue. Facebook settled claims that discriminated against US workers for some jobs in favor of temporary visa holders. So the whole issue of H1B visa, just like it brought up, it's a wage issue. And then, just like how Trump brought it up in 2016, it's so unfair against American workers. It's favoring big corporations. It's favoring, like, you know how like the liberals talk about, oh, we hate corporations. It's hurting American workers. But at the same time, they're the ones saying we want more H1B visa. We want more legal immigrants. And it's funny how this has nothing to do with immigration. And also a lot of people overstay on their H1B visa. So in other words, H1B visa is sort of also helping illegal immigration if you encourage people to overstay in this country. And
Yeah.
and then it's just and then you brought up about the O1 visa. So let me do like a quick comparison of eligibility between an O1 visa and H1B visa. So this is for the O1 visa. Must demonstrate extraordinary ability, typically through significant achievements such as major awards, publication, or recognition in the field. Requires substantial evidence of being in the top percentile of their field. Typically includes artists, scientists, athletes, business leaders, or entertainment professionals. And then for quota, there is no annual quota. But let's look at the H1B visa. So eligibility for H1B must hold a bachelor degree or higher in a specific field related to the job. The job must qualify as a specialty occupation, typically requiring expertise in fields like IT, engineering, finance, healthcare, or education. And
Actually,
yeah,
sorry to cut you off, but I just saw some news. The Department of Homeland Security announced that starting January 17th, um, jobs they no longer require a direct link to your degree. So there's specialty occupation rules for the H1B visa, right? Like you just talked about. But
yeah,
now like fields like AI and data science, they're recognized, and students on like F1 on the F1 visa, that's the visa that most international students are on. Usually they can't people can't work on an F1 visa, right? They can work off campus, right? They're
mhm,
protected until they extended the validity of the visa, so they have more time to find the jobs and to receive the H1B visa. So I believe this year you're gonna start to see a large increase in H1B applicants and people on the H1B visa, because if they're extending the they're extending the moratorium for the F1, and Elon Musk and
mhm.
Vivek are saying that they want more, then they're obviously the quotas are going to shoot up. So it's only going to get
Yeah,
worse.
yeah. And then so for the H1B visa, there is an annual cap of 65,000, but then there is an additional cap of 20,000 more people if they have advanced degrees. But it's funny how we were talking. It's funny how the H1B visa is listing out all these requirements, and then it's in the perfect world, we are hiring specialty occupations. I never thought specialty occupation includes janitors or 7-Eleven cashiers. And
Yeah.
then it's and then the thing is that we just mentioned how the H1B visa has this 97% acceptance rate. So 97% on like about 85,000 applicants. That's like over 80,000 people coming into coming into our labor market, taking away American jobs. And then 75% of that 80,000 people applicants are Indian workers. So let's get into something controversial, all right? This podcast is all about culture. We're not just some nerds talking about economics or policy. Let's talk about culture. What happens when you start importing the third world? All right. Yes, I'm calling India the third world. I love
It
Indian
is the third
people.
world.
Indian culture, a lot of it is awesome.
Yeah.
But Matt, talk to us about how a country, what happens to a country when you start massively importing people in, especially when you get 85,000 Indians coming in and Chinese coming in to the country.
It's like when Trump in the debate said, like, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, right? Even though that, that's disputed, right? When you have, I'll use the Haitian migrants as an example. Even if they're nice people, right? Even if, they're just here, they just don't know the language, they're just learning to drive, right? But they have good intentions, right? You cause demographic issues, right? It's the same thing in Ireland with the asylum seekers and with the lax policy the EU has on them, or the lax policy that even Britain has on them, right? It's that these people, they come in, they don't know the language. You can't even find translators for Haitian Creole because it's not it's such a isolated language. Only Haitians speak it, right? They don't all speak like French, like standard French, right? So when you introduce completely a new set of people to a certain to a place where they're not equipped to serve the community, then the community will change and the locals will feel some type of way about that. It doesn't matter if they're nice people. It doesn't matter if they're just here to work, right? When you introduce a new set of people, a new culture into a community that already has a set one, then the locals there will feel a certain way, right? It's the same. It's like Israel and Palestine, right? The Palestinians were there for how long? The Jews left thousands of years ago. When the Jews came back, the Arabs are like, "What the hell, man? Like, you can just think you're gonna come in here and then change everything? Like, no, you know." So people are going to feel some type of way, whether or not the people that are moving in are well intentioned, right? Especially when they don't speak the language. How are you supposed to how is you supposed to have the connection there, right? How are you supposed to know about each other? How do you even learn from each other? You don't speak the language, right? So especially in these third world countries, where you might have people like trapping geese by the pond, right? In India, they worship cows, right? They worship cow dung, right? You see these videos online, and people, you're gonna say I'm being racist or xenophobic, but it's true. They do worship cows. They do worship the cow dung, and you'll see people. They even have like festivals with the dung where they slather themselves with it and they throw it at each other, right?
Mm.
So people, they see that and they're like, we don't want that in my country, right? They're gonna assume that because their culture, because their religion says that they're gonna bring that here, right? That's why people are pissed off. People do not want that massive demographic changes, right? And that's human nature, right? You have a set culture, you have set beliefs, right? People are going to come into your community and they're going to change your community, change the demographics of your community. Of course, they're going to be upset. They should be.
Mhm.
You, what do you think about it? Because you
Yeah,
come
it's
you went to school in Taiwan. You probably think that, like, some cultures, they might bring some things to learn for us, or they might think that some aspects of their culture might even be detrimental, right? Well, I'm curious to know what you think about
yeah,
this.
we love, in my opinion, I love meeting different cultures. I love when
Hmm.
you experience different cultures. But the the point of politics, the whole point of having a country is not an economic zone, a country,
Mm.
or as I would put it, a nation is more than just a border. a land, a currency, a governing body, and a military. A nation is culture and values and its people. And then when you start massively importing people, especially especially for, let's use India again. We're not trying to target India. We're just using it as an example. Yeah,
Yeah.
India again. They might not, even though India is technically a democracy, but they don't really share values. Let's say about equality. They don't. They have this caste system. They like discrimination is built into their culture. There
Yeah.
isn't this really the idea of liberty, equality, and then let's say even for respect for women. India, they still have child marriages going on. Um, and then
Gang rape is very
in my
prevalent.
opinion, today, if 75% of H1B visa applicants are South Korean or Scandinavians or Taiwanese, I don't think there's going to be that big of an issue. But the thing is that we're taking in, this is the second year in a row where we took in over 1 million Indians into our country, 1 million people into our country. And then I'm not saying everyone is horrible or whatsoever, but when you have such a huge amount of people pouring in from a completely different cultural background, it's a threat to the identity of the country. Like
Mm.
I would like to quote Marcus Cicero on his definition of a nation. So Marcus Cicero says, "A nation is not an aggregate of men brought together by chance, but a union of people united by a shared justice, laws, and a desire for common good." If we do not have shared justice, laws, and especially a desire for common good that we can all agree upon, we are not a nation anymore. So that's why Benjamin Franklin says, what type of government we are. He said, "A republic if you can keep it." And here I'll quote Marcus Cicero again on his definition of a republic, which the United States of America is. The republic is the property of the people, but a people is not every group of men associated in any manner, but a group united by common agreement on law and rights and by the desire to participate in mutual benefits. So basically expanding on his definition of a nation. And it's really important to note that he mentioned twice that a nation is not people brought together by chance. A republic is not people in every group of men associated in any manner. So culture really matters because what we are seeing, let's say in London, the number one most popular boy's name now is Muhammad. Well, I'm a
Muhammad,
Christian.
yeah.
I'm a Catholic. Oh, such as Matt, but and I have respect for people from other religion, and there are certain a lot of Muslim athletes I look up to who are awesome people. But what happens is that when you start massively replacing people of your own culture with another culture, especially of a competing one that do not share a value, you are basically self-destroying your own country from within. Like
Hmm.
China is less of a geopolitical threat when they are not importing people in. When if we're just in a cold war with them, they are not big of a threat to America right now compared to if you have over 1 million Chinese pouring in, and then as Asians we can like especially. Well, I'm of like Chinese descent. I'm not sure about you, but China there are a lot of Chinese with horrible cultures. Like China's a big country. There are a lot of Chinese who are basically like not that much different from people of the third world at all. And then in order to preserve the country, in order to have a nation, you need to have control immigration. You need to control who's coming in, and you need to be selective on who's coming in. I won't
Yeah.
have that big of a problem if today, just like what it says, 75% of them coming from South Korea and Taiwan or whatever, even though it's still going to be wrong against the American workers when you start importing cheap labors. But culturally, it's not going to be that big of a threat to America.
Yeah.
But when you have people from the third world, then it's going to be an issue.
Yeah. It's going to be a bigger issue if they're from the third world, but it's also like all the countries, all the economically sound countries, aside from the Western ones, like you look at Japan and Korea, even China. I know that they have their own economic issues, and then people are going to mention like, oh, with the population, they need immigrants, blah blah blah. But I'm just saying that the reason why you go to those places, the reason why you're like, oh my God, it's so clean, it's so organized, it's so safe. I can leave my laptop in the cafe and nobody's going to steal it, right? The reason why is because it's homogenous. People are going to like that. They're going to say, but man, diversity is good, right? Yeah, okay, diversity is good, right? But diversity is good uh, for in your mind, right? You think that, oh, because I have a whole bunch of people, I'll get to learn. I'll have more eclectic worldview, and yeah, I understand that. But when it comes to people and their culture and the history and the values that they have, they don't want to import people who aren't going to adhere to those things. That's why those countries have such strict immigration, because if you start letting in these people that aren't going to learn the language, right? Like many immigrants here, I'll say in New York, for example, they don't make a concerted effort to learn English, right? They stay in their cultural enclaves. They don't try to become American, right? They end up, staying here for a little while with the H1B, etc., and just sending money back. And then once they feel satisfied enough, they'll go back. They're not patriots. They're not here to contribute to this country. So you need to screen people and pick the ones who want to become American, who will learn English and actually contribute to our society, right? If you just take a bunch of people from the third world and say, "Oh, we want some cheap labor," then you're not gonna have a country at the end of the day, right? Yes, economics is important. Yes, you want to maximize. You have fiduciary responsibilities, your shareholders, right? And you want to find the cheapest, most efficient way. I understand all of that, right? But the reason why people are upset is because they feel like their culture, the Western culture, is under attack. And it's not just here, it's even in Europe and England, the whole issue with the EDL or the Reform Party. People, they have genuine concerns and nobody is hearing them because everybody is, it's either uh, corporate greed or they have a globalist ideology. That's the reason why people need to speak up. They need like we're doing right now. They need to show everyone like, we're not going to stand for this. You're not going to come here and then denigrate my culture. You come to my country, you're going to learn my language, right? You're gonna adapt if you want to live here. We'll take you, but you better not denigrate our culture because we're taking you in. It's a privilege for you to be here.
Yeah, you brought up these countries being homogenous, and I'm sure there are people definitely gonna freak out when they heard the term. Oh my gosh, you're saying they're all of the same race? How racist is that? Well, the whole issue of diversity is that diversity only works when when people assimilate, when people have
Yeah,
the same common ground, when people have the same morals. How are you even still a country when you are divided from the core, when you don't even share the same moral? And then this is the whole issue of immigration. We are like America, like both of us, we're not white at all. Like America is found as like a European white nation initially. We're not white at all. America, we are already such a tolerant country when it comes to immigration, that you can, the fact that there are people living in Japan who even grew up in Japan, but if their race is not Japanese, they would never be Japanese. But in America, you come into this country, as long as you are willing to learn the language, as long as you speak English, as long as you also pledge allegiance to um to red, white, and blue, then you can be American. But the issue is that it operates under the rule that diversity works when there's assimilation, and when there is a common ground that we can all agree on, especially when it comes to values and morals. This is why immigration should never really be about the need of the immigrants. It should always be about the need
need of
of
the
the
people.
country.
Yeah,
Yeah, the need of the people. That's what Marcus Cicero was saying when he was saying that when he said a group united by common agreement on law and rights and by the desire to participate in mutual benefits. And he especially when he mentioned the republic is the property of the people. You don't it's the property of us, not everyone, not anyone else. You don't just get to come in and demand that you be a part of us while not wanting to be part of the culture at all. So yeah, to wrap up our whole H1B debate, especially now we're talking about culture in general. Matt, what do you see, especially Trump is becoming president soon? How would you see, like, ideally how the country plays out in terms of dealing with the H1B visa issue or just preserving the American culture?
Well, as you can see now that you have a bunch of you have Elon Musk and Vivek and JD Vance, whose wife is also Indian. I'm nothing against Indians here. I'm talking about like immigrants as a whole, right? Obviously, they're going to be pro-immigration. Obviously, they see some issues, like especially Vivek, with how American culture sort of glorifies um, mediocrity, as they say, right? I disagree, and many people do disagree, right? So I hope that ideally that they'll take a step back and sort of reflect on why people are upset that that they're saying these things. Why people are upset that Vivek thinks that you know that everybody should just be a nerd essentially, and you know not hit on girls when they're in high school or in college, and should just always be drilled into their books, have no social life. Or why Elon Musk is comparing the labor market and the American economy and the Chinese economy to the NBA, right? Like he's saying, like, oh, if you want, if you want us to beat China, then we got to recruit the best players, like the Wembys and the Jokic's of tech, right? It's not exactly the best the best analogy here, especially when you're talking about uh, the cultural implications of the country, right? So ideally, I hope that they'll see like why it's not such a black and white issue in terms of like trying to make America number one, especially when China doesn't immigrate any or very small amount of foreign labor, and America we're expected to like recruit from all over the place. And especially you saw that meme where it's like, oh, the American math Olympic team won against China for the first time, and all the kids are Chinese, but they're just holding up the American flag. You know, so I think that America has a lot of talent. They have a lot. They have a huge labor force that are qualified. There are a lot of people in tech who are qualified that just can't find jobs right now because of many reasons that would take too long to dive into. And I think that we should prioritize American labor development. We should prioritize Americans gaining these tech skills. But we should do it our way. Let's not do it China's way. Let's not do it, India's way. Let's do it the American way, right? There's a way. There's a reason why we've been number one for so long, right? There's a reason why we have led the world in innovations, right? It's not because of tiger parenting. It's not because our culture promotes mediocrity, right? It's because there's something about America that attracts these people. There's a reason why these people want to come here, right? So if we lose the identity, if we lose that sense of who we are, then there's not gonna be any more innovation. The country as we know it will cease to exist.
Yeah, exactly. We are the shining city on the hill. In order to stay that way, we have to preserve American culture. And then, as the data has shows, American students, American talents are not any worse than foreign talents. Of course, if we have special, like extraordinary foreign talents like Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, they should definitely come here. That's what the O1 visa is for. So my vision, and I'm sure Matt will agree with me on that as well. I wouldn't say we completely eliminate H1B visa, as of right now, but we should definitely limit it. And then if we were to increase, it's the O1 visa that needs to be increased. And to conclude today's podcast, besides preserving culture, Asian American man, we are part of that shining city on the hill. We have our head low. We've had been taken advantage by a lot of people. We've been afraid to stand up, but now this is the year that we start making changes. And thank you to everyone who tuned into our podcast, and we look forward to seeing all of you again.
And stay tuned, guys. Episode 2. See ya.
All right.